Good morning. Welcome to the Coast Division Virtual Saturday Meetup. Before we start, Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a great holidays and has a very wonderful 2026. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today we have really not much to talk about formally, and then we'll get informal real quickly. I'm going to talk a little bit about upcoming events. We are going to schedule a modeling for the coast on the 24th. So that'll be our next meetup. That's in 2 weeks. We'll talk about that. And then we'll just do a little bit on our general coast modeling. So 3 events that are upcoming to put on your calendars. And by the way, if anyone has an event that I don't have here, let me know. I'm trying to get some of these things, more and more of them up on the calendars and the PCR calendar. So the PCR layout and design weekend is the end of the month. I think it's the 31st and the 1st. It will be in Santa Clara, California. That's at the depot at the South Bay Railroad Historical Society. The way they're doing it this year is Saturday will be operations and layout tours and a dinner, and Sunday will be clinic day. And so normally what used to be on Saturday is now on Sunday. What used to be on Sunday is now on Saturday. So if you haven't registered for that, bayldops.com is the website, and so you can register for that. It's kind of a good immersive weekend in how layout should work, and then a little bit of operations. If you're interested in O-scale or O-scale curious, or just want to check out some pretty good sales and some interesting railroad layouts, O-scale West is March 6th to 7th. They have moved from Memorial Day weekend and being in a hotel to being non-Memorial Day weekend, and they've actually moved to the IFES Portuguese Hall in Mountain View. Gets them out of a hotel, which reduces the cost structure, I think, for the event. So hopefully this will be a good event. Whether you're an O-scale or a 2-railer, a 3-railer, narrow gauge, standard gauge, whatever O-scale 148th modeling, it's an interesting event to go to. So that'll be on March 6th and 7th. And then, of course, the PCR convention is April 30th through May 3rd, and that'll be in Roanoke Park. So if you haven't registered for that, go ahead and get that. I'll try to put some links a little bit later as we talk into the chat if anyone's interested. So hopefully see everyone at the convention. So those were the 3 events I have kind of on my calendar coming up over the next 3 months. Like I said, next time we get together in 2 weeks on the 24th, we're going to have one of our modeling on the coast. We did one of these so far, and we had 2 respondents. You can see some of the pictures down below. Dave did an excellent talk about a car he built that actually, I think, won first place at the narrow gauge convention. And I talked a little bit about the backdrops I've been doing. So, it was a fun thing, but, I'd like to do is get at least 5 or 6 people, so send 3 slides, just send them that coastsup23@gmail. If you get the Coast Extra, that's the email it comes from. So just reply to the Coast Extra and just say, hey, just change it and say slides for modeling on the coast. And what I'll do is I take those, whatever pictures you send me, put them in a slide deck. Dave, was it pretty painless?
Yeah, there was no paint at all involved with that. I already
Exactly.
had the pictures, so
Exactly. And if you take pictures while you model, it's
yeah.
I have so many pictures on my camera, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we'll try to do that. I think it's a great way to show your modeling without having to try to put something on by yourself, because it'll get shown for you. So really, that's all I had. So I'm just going to open it up to general discussions. I know one thing we were talking about is the timing for the auction. We can probably resume that discussion at some point, but I will just throw it open to everyone to let everyone know what you're thinking about.
Yeah, Phil, I'd like to interject when you talked about O-scale West. Uh, One of the things that happened is Rod was trying to simplify it. It used to have O-scale, S-scale, and all narrow gauge scales in the title. So he dropped it just for simplicity back to O-scale West. But it still basically is also S-scale and all narrow gauge scales. So
Right.
if you look at the blurs and things there, it's yeah. So how that's going to work out without really stating that anymore, I don't know, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Rod and those guys as they were going through this. And one of the questions I really asked was, how many S scale people do you have versus really focusing on O scale? because the people that haven't come, quite frankly, to O Scale West were the three rail folks.
Hmm.
And there are more three rail folks than everybody else in O Scale.
Yep.
So it's a challenge for them. And I think that, they got trapped in kind of the post-COVID. And the problem with any event like that is they grow essentially what I will call virally. Somebody goes to the show and they tell all their friends, yeah, it was a great place to go buy stuff. A vendor goes and they tell all their friends they had a great show and they made money, and they tell their friends you should go. So the next year more people come and more vendors come, and they all tell their friends, and it's that kind of viral growth you get as an event grows. The problem is the minute you turn the corner and things go down a little bit, it becomes just the opposite, right? People tell their friends, yeah, it wasn't that great this year. There weren't that many vendors. It's really not worth the price of admission. The vendors tell the other vendors, hey, we didn't make much money. So all of a sudden, every year you get 10% less vendors, and you get
Hmm.
10% less vendors for 5 or 6 years. You're half the size you were.
Yeah.
And so, it's, I think Ron's doing a good job of trying to turn that around by shaking some things up, reducing the cost a little bit, trying to get more vendors there, and then trying to expand to the three rail community.
Hmm.
So we'll see it. We'll see how it is this year. It's the Portuguese Hall in Mountain View is actually a pretty nice place. It's fairly easy access, good parking. For the modular guys and the vendors, it's better access than it was down in San Jose in Santa Clara
Yep.
at the hotel there.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, do you have a feel for what that hall is costing him?
Yes, I do. I know exactly what the hall is costing them. It's $7,500.
Ooh,
So
okay.
this
I
is this
was
is
thinking
not cheap.
about talking to them maybe about doing a coast meet over there, but I think that's above our budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually looked at that when they went through it. And by the way, I went to the fairgrounds in Pleasanton
Hmm.
and got a quote from them for a building that's like 13,000 square feet. And by the time they got done adding all their security costs onto it, it was 11,000.
Yeah.
So it's renting places. I mean, that's why, quite frankly, for us trying to do the two events we try to do every year at the Golden State Mile Railroad Museum and at the South Bay Historical Society, those two are
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
absolutely essential, because if we had to go rent a hall to do those
Yeah.
meetings, rent a location, it would at least cost us a couple $100. There's just nothing cheap anymore. It's
Well,
unfortunate.
even the larger societies like the SP Historical and Technical Society, their most recent convention, they lost money on that. And so where they are now is saying, we're going to have to give up hotels because with the turnout and declining thing, they've got 1,600 members, but they had only about 100 people register for the event. And he just said, we aren't even breaking even anymore. So we're
Right.
looking at kind of a small financial crisis later on this year and a few other things. It's just that everybody's staying home.
Okay, that the Historical Society had a problem. 90% of their members are in California, and they had the convention in Tucson, Arizona,
Yeah,
and it just is a little
yeah.
far.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I guess that depends. I'm used to national narrow gauge conventions, which are all over the United States, and I've made over half of them. So it's just a matter of how you
Historic
want to spend your money, I think.
like you.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it is having gone through that at convention, when you go to a
yeah.
hotel, the hotels evaluate convention business or group business
Hmm.
basically on a pure what is the profit. And they're selling you three things, right? They're selling you meeting space, they're selling you food, and they're selling rooms. And what they do is they put a package together that says, here's what you got to pay for the rooms. You want this food, this is what the food, you have to spend this much on food. And then the last thing is you
Hmm.
got to rent this many rooms over the event. And the problem is you end up signing a contract to commit to that stuff up front. And the rooms are easy. The food, you got to figure out what you're going to spend the money on. But then the last one, if you don't cover the rooms, they come back to you and they want you to pay for them.
Yeah,
And the problem is if you're at $179 a night and you're 20 rooms short, you can go through the math. It's a big hit at the end of it. And so I know O Scale West had that happen last time at the hotel they were at in Santa Clara. I think that happened at the Garden Convention that was here at the big hotel down there. And so, yeah, by the way, we're going to have the same discussion, as we start to look for who's going to be the chair of our 2028 convention, and we do the PCR convention here, of exactly how we manage it, because we're going to have a lot of the same issues come 2028. I think we were really lucky in 2024 that when we went looking for the hotel space at the end of 22, they were still in the effects of COVID. And so they were all really hungry at that point. And we found one hotel that was really hungry. I'm not sure how hungry they're going to be next year when we start looking for 28. So yeah, it's a real challenge. And what's interesting is, like, if you look at the narrow gauge convention that was in St. Louis this year, it was not at a hotel.
No.
It was at a convention center. There was no hotel directly associated. So they went to a small, I won't call it rural, but non-city center, suburban convention center, and rented the space. But there were no room commitments and no meal commitments, because convention centers are just pure space driven. So, I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up. And by the way, if you go to those conventions, I have two words for you: Airbnb and VRBO. We did an Airbnb at the last narrow gauge convention, and there were four of us, and actually Rich was with, and I don't know, I think the cost per night was what, $70 or $80, Rich, as I remember correctly. It wasn't very much. We're doing a Santa Fe operating weekend, and the hotels were $200 a night, and we've got four of us staying in a 4-bedroom house for about 75.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Yeah, it's if you go to, and the thing that's interesting, so by the way, the reason I bring this up is, you go to Roanoke Park, I always get the hotel to make sure they cover their hotel nights for the guys who organize the convention, unless they come out and say the hotel rooms are all booked, and then you're free to do whatever if you're once the conventions are not in a hotel where there's a room commitment, then there are a lot of other housing options that become. And I tell everybody, when you have an event, if you send an email around to everybody so everybody knows who's going, you can do two things. You can arrange carpools, but for events that are travel events, you can arrange for room sharing. And the Airbnbs aren't bad. If you've got a 4-bedroom house and you got 4 people, everybody has their own bedroom, and maybe you have to share a bathroom. I can share a bathroom with somebody for a couple of nights. It doesn't really bother me that much. So anyway, just some thoughts.
Yeah, I would also interject on the SP thing. Is one of the things that was pointed out in the newsletter is that for the first time, a good number of the attendees did not stay at the convention hotel, which was their downfall on being able to break even. They were staying at other places. So, the trends are toward, I think, what you're talking about, Phil, is rental hall. People are on their own for lodging, and
Yep. Yeah, I think that's going to be the case with a lot more events. And here clearly, O Scale West was the last kind of regular event we had in the Bay Area that was a hotel-based event.
Yeah.
Our conventions are the only other thing, and having a national convention here, I think getting a national convention here would be really challenging now. The combination of room rates and travel, et cetera. So, but we'll talk about that. The Sierra guys are thinking about. So, they're doing 27, and my understanding is they're thinking about looking at Reno as a location for 27. Just out of curiosity, for folks who would think about going to the convention, is going to Reno an issue?
Not for me. I think it'd be nice to go there just because I haven't been there in a long time.
Yeah.
Should be able to get cheap hotels.
The Historical Society went to Reno in 24, and it was excellent.
Yep. And this was kind of our discussion. One of the discussions we had at a board level, at PCR board level, was, if we were to try to do a national convention again, because there was a discussion about should we try to do a national convention again, that Reno might be a good location where you could get people to come.
I think you I think you can take the train from here and drop you off in downtown. Depends on where the event would be.
Yep, that's true.
The convention we had was in Sparks.
Yep.
Um, it's not hard to get from the train station in Reno to Sparks to the Nugget. I think it's a coach service or some form of cheaper transportation. You really have to take the train. Don't rely on Amtrak.
Yeah.
Their record these days is terrible.
Yeah, we had a meeting last night out at the ACRS, and our president showed up like right when the meeting started, and he said his son was coming on an Amtrak, and the train was 2 hours late. So yeah, I think Amtrak schedules are more of a suggestion at this point.
Hey, Phil, did they
Uh,
have a date for the 2027 convention yet?
no, I have not seen anything about the dates for the 2027. They've not come back to the board and made a proposal yet.
Okay.
I don't even know who's. I guess that's an interesting question because I don't even know who's chairing it. I'll ping Dave Putnam and find out.
Anyway, just to get back, Reno was fine because the casinos expect people will gamble in
Right.
addition to food and lodging.
Yeah, because that's what Frank's doing for or the logging convention is doing. It's in the Black Oak Casino now.
Yeah. Yeah, plenty of casinos out there. A lot of tribes willing to scalp you.
Yep. So anyway, anybody got any great modeling they've been doing, or mediocre modeling for that matter?
Mediocre
Yeah.
at
I've been,
best.
I've been doing a lot of throwing away.
Ah,
It's halfway a lot of fun. It's the question of what do you do if you're a pack rat and you've got 1970s model railroader magazine in nice, neat cardboard containers. They're much heavier than I thought they would be when to haul them to the garbage.
well, the thing with those is that one place to do is to donate them to one of the clubs.
I've
I know
tried that.
Walnut Creek. I can take some of them for ACR. We put them in the back. We have a table and we put out free magazines for people to take. And we tend to, over the course of the fair, we'll go through 100, 200 magazines because
Wow.
so the weird thing about, there's one of these things that I was talking about with, I do this thing called New Tracks, and we do a meetup like this every Wednesday on video. But we have work clinics and stuff. And, one of the things I've talked to people about is the difference between going to an event like this or an event like that and going and doing a Google search. So, if you're building a model and you want to weather a tar paper roof, you can go on Google and type in weathering model roof in O scale, tarp roof in O scale, and you'll get back a bunch of stuff. You'll probably get back some cool videos about it. I mean, if you've ever done this, it's amazing how much stuff there is out there. But the thing that's interesting about it is you had to know what you wanted to look for. And I would guarantee you that all of us, if I asked talk to you about building a model, all of us have a set of techniques we use to build models that as you go through multiple models, there's this technique that every time you do it, get to this weathering, get to this roof, you do it exactly the same way because that's how you've learned to do it. And you know what? Gives you good results. The thing that's so interesting about this kind of event or any virtual event where people meet up like this is somebody can talk about doing something that you didn't know you were interested in at all. And all of a sudden you realize that's a better way of doing it than I've been doing it. And if you had not accidentally through serendipity been there where that person mentioned that, you would have kept doing it the old way for the rest of your life. But all of a sudden you get a new way. And it's kind of the what do you not know? And that's the beauty of conventions and virtual meetups is you learn things that you didn't know you needed to learn. I don't know if
Mhm.
that makes sense to people, but to me, it's
Yep.
really interesting. All the stuff that when I know what I want to go find out, I know how to go find it. What's always cool to me about the field trips we take, the conventions we've gone to, virtual events I go to, is almost always I walk away with one or two things that I go, wow, that was something I learned that I never thought about.
Oh, well, hey,
So,
you mentioned something just now um, about meetups and conventions and things like that. We need a sign for the Great Train Show or something like that. And it has to be larger. And it's very simple. It says, ask us. Because one of the things that I learned when I was working the convention, the Great Train Show, was people were fascinated by the little diorama I brought and that sort of stuff. And what they wanted to know was, how do you do that? They're not looking for a clinic or whatever. They just want to chat about it. But
right.
it was an ask us. We're there. I remember also of the Berkeley Garden Club, of all things, and we do some civic things in the street, plant shelter. And one of the things we have is a big sign that says, ask us. Because, God, some of the people that do this thing are really smart
Yep.
and they want to
Well,
they want to share, at least in the garden club type
well,
of setting.
so it's an interesting thought. And so you know, as I'm now want to do, I'd really love somebody to step forward and say, "Hey, I'll take that on." Um, the NMRA does a thing at the national conventions called Ask the MMR. I mean, we could do something similar. I don't, and it's not really the MMR thing, but how do you position it so ask us, model railroad experts available or something like that. And if we put something like that up, I'd be very much in favor of putting that up at train shows and
Mhm.
other events. I am trying to figure out, and I need to talk to Rod and see where they end up on tables, but I'll probably try to grab a table and do something for the NMR for the MRA at O Scale West. Um, but yeah, no, that's a really good idea. Get people to stop and talk. So
And the thing I'd like to see is beyond just doing this, as answering questions at a train show. I'd like to have some place to make these people understand they can come after the train show and ask a question for someone, have a website or so forth that they can access as public access, and maybe get a mentor to come visit.
yep, no, that's true.
The other thing that people really that seemed to draw people over was that 12 by 12 module that I put out, the display thing. And I remember from all the other great train shows that I've worked, we used to have our own. Now, I'm not trying to compete with CCC or anybody like that, but we had a little model. We had something that was not words kind of thing, but something, whoa, look at that. That's a real neat looking whatever. I mean, when Pat Latoris and I used to make trains together, make models together on the corner of the table, we always had people stopping in front of us.
Right.
And it's just something to throw into the pot
Yeah,
that
I, I,
on the
I think I think part of that was me. I was pretty pedantic about using the train show to recruit and to kind of get out of, the problem is if you're sitting there doing a model demonstration, people walk up and look at it and walk away. From the reason we're there, which is to recruit NMRA members, we didn't accomplish anything. To my mind, the train show is about promoting model railroading. Our presence is about recruiting NMRA members. And so, I got back into this has been 2.5 years ago, was, if you set up the time saver and you have one or two people working the time saver and you have a bunch of kids who come up and use the time saver, at the end of the day, you had 2 volunteers time times 6 hours. That's 12 hours of volunteer time. And it had no resulting impact of what we really wanted to do. The reason we're there is not, the reason California Central Coast is there is to promote the hobby. The reason everybody else is there is to promote the hobby. The reason we're there is to try to have people sign up to be NMRA members. And so I think I was pretty pedantic with this early on about not wanting to get in that mode where everybody came and was sitting doing something and not interacting with the public and trying to sell them on the concept of NMRA membership. I think what we've done now is have an area where you can show models and do some stuff. I think makes sense, but we've got to combine that with trying to make sure that we walk through. We did, by the way, we got 10 new members at the train show in Pleasanton. Sadly, or I guess maybe not that sadly, 5 of them were not Coast Division people. 5 of them were either from Sierra or Daylight or Red. I think one was from Red, a couple from Sierra, and a couple from Daylight. So, yeah, I think we've got another train show coming up, by the way, in Vallejo. Vallejo, yeah, Vallejo. So it's actually nominally being run by Red, but I basically volunteered to help them with it and signed up for it. And I'm going to be there anyway, so I'll take all the NMRA stuff up and set it up. So there will be a sign up if anybody's interested in doing that. But basically do very similar. I think by the way, I think that was great, Jesse. And I thought about bringing some models and putting them out on the table and talking about them. I think just having some really cool models out actually is almost enough versus trying to have something where you're actually building something. Though the building something is an interesting thing. We've got one of the members of the club in Pleasanton has set up on the back table and has been building just pit models during events, and it gets a lot of interest.
Well, I've been making trees at these things. They're the ugliest things in the world, but everybody always walks by, stops and says, "Oh, look at that." And probably a quarter of those people talk to me about making trees or about what I'm doing or what material I'm using or whatever, having nothing to do with, can I sit down and make one with you? Because that, I think, is a waste of time.
No,
just to get somebody to stop and, you could talk this to death type of thing, and I'm sure.
The other thing Bill at the great train shows has been more than willing to do is to give us enough space to set up, 15, 20 chairs, and we can bring the projector on our screen, and we could have, every couple of hours some sort of a presentation, and that would be, the idea that, the show starts at 10 o'clock and at 11 o'clock we have, getting into model railroading, maybe something on choosing a scale, or think about what are the 3 or 4 topics that we could do where during the day, every couple of hours, we'd have a 15-minute presentation where we'd have a sign that said, come visit our, we call it the NMRA Theater or something like that. And we could come and do a talk that someone, and the target to me really is the person that's getting back into the hobby or getting into the hobby, right? What are the 3 things you should know before you get into the hobby? Can we turn those into a 15-minute presentation and then have people that'll be there and do it during the show? Because then we have I'll tell you the story from my perspective. My background's kind of technical and marketing, etc. And I took over a marketing role in a company that did early SQL development tools. And it was a way of, a software that lets you develop an application for your company that talked to a SQL database. And the guys that were doing it have been going to shows. They'd have a table set up and they'd have some computers and they'd demonstrate it to people and people would walk up and they would get about 40 or 50 leads at a trade show. The first one we did after I took over is we took the same 10 by 20 area that they were using. We set it up with a little table at one end and filled it with chairs and a screen at the other end. And every 20 minutes or half hour, we did a presentation where the engineers got up and actually developed an app in real time and showed them how you do it. And we got 780 contacts out of that show. So it went from 50 to 780 because if you get people to sit down and watch something, you get that opportunity to contact. And what we can do is do a little slide deck that's 10 slides or 15 slides about getting into model railroading, and then the last slide could be why you want to join the NMRA. And then when you get done, you got the opportunity to talk to them. So I'd love to do that, but quite frankly, there's no way I can do that alone. So it'd take probably 2 or 3 people at least getting together and saying we want to do that.
I don't know, Phil. I'm gonna take the devil's advocate side of that. I think it's a good idea, by the way, the thing. But I asked the question: have you ever walked a train show with a 12-year-old or with a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
And you walk this thing, and I look out and I see the kid. The father is sort of into trains or sort of thinking, remembering this. Wow, wasn't that great? Or would they? And the kid goes over, wham. And the 2 of the people that we signed up when I was on my shift, we basically signed up
A parent
the
for a child.
kids' parents. And they got real interested, the parents, and said, oh, yeah, well, because they were stuck with the damn kid. And the wife was off someplace else doing something else. And they said, kinetic hobbies are making a comeback, or this, that, or the other thing. So the attention span, if it's not a screen, is like a minute and a half. So that's what I mean in terms of taking the other side of this from a theater point of view. I don't think I would ever get my grandson to sit in a theater.
But by the way, that's actually a good thing. Again, I want to sell to the grandson.
Yeah.
We want to, and the question is, and it's actually a really interesting question, is those parents that signed up, will they become ongoing members or not? Which is a very interesting question. I mean, the person that I, personally, I want to get is me in 2015, coming to the train show, having been a model railroader before, coming back to the train show, trying to decide what I'm going to do in the hobby. And that's the person that if we can get them to say, oh, choosing your scale, here's a presentation. And then at the end say, well, have you thought about joining the NMRA? And then talk to them and get them to join the NMRA. Because to me, what's interesting is that there are kind of 2 kinds of modelers. There are modelers who've been around a long time and know who the NMRA is and are not members. And a lot of those people, when you talk to them about joining the NMRA, you actually don't necessarily get a positive reaction. And then there are the people that are coming back into the hobby, don't really know what they're doing. They said, it's the 50-year-old guy who's, the kids hit 16, 17, they don't need you any longer. You start looking around for some things to do and you remember that, oh yeah, I really like model railroading. I like trains. So you go to a train show. I mean, that's the person that's saying, hey, since you're getting back to the hobby, joining the NMRA is a great way to learn and meet people and bring them in. So to me, those are, kind of when I look at the train show, there are model railroaders there, and they fall into basically, to my mind, 3 classes. There are people who are NMRA members. There are people who aren't NMRA members and are very familiar with the NMRA and have strong reasons for not, personal reasons that they believe for not joining. And then there's the third group, which are model railroads who don't know what the NMRA is. And our highest probability of getting new members is actually that last group. So anyway, it will be fun. But that's the last train show until the end of the year. The next train show will be Pleasanton again in December, I assume. Because I think they will come back right before Christmas again.
Uh,
Yeah, and the other thing is, I really would. Well, I think it's a lot of time for the value you get from a recruiting perspective. If we wanted to get the time saver, I sent an email to Eric, and I don't think I got an email back about. I think he has the time saver. I mean, I guess that's another question. Should we be trying to bring the time saver to our events we do? Is there any value? I'm going to ask you guys because I don't have a lot of familiarity with it. I went to, I think, 1 or 2 events where the time saver was at, and I didn't participate or anything. I didn't. Do people see that as being something fun in the past? I have a strong reaction from Jesse and not much from anybody else. The average here is looking bad.
I know kind of back when I first started going, they used to have it, and there was kind of a group of guys kind of competing with each other in a kind of a fun way. But,
Yep.
I didn't see a lot of interest post that. But like you said, Eric stopped bringing it, so it's hard to say.
Yeah. I don't. I thought it was probably of very limited interest, excitement, but again, I'll kind of lean it to you guys to what we want to do.
Yeah, I think that, since it hasn't been around for quite a number of years, if we can get it in and, not make it any kind of a competition or contest, just a fun thing, worth a try at least once.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Or
Sierra
do the
has
other,
one.
or
Yeah.
do the other thing. Actually, make it into a competition and say, "We're going to give you, a free railroad spike or something like that if you can do this within 20 seconds or a minute and a half or something." Because my feeling is, I think the time saver loop is boring as hell.
Well, yeah, I think the only way it really does, like you say, make sense is turn into some sort of a competition, and because that's really what it was. It was
Yeah,
really a
but you
competition.
don't want to scare people away from it, Phil.
But that's the problem is that then
That's
the
true.
new member. I know when I came in, I saw it there, and
You're
I didn't
intimidated.
feel confident enough that I wanted to go over and do it in front of everybody that I didn't know.
Yeah, you don't want to be intimidated because the pros know how to do it, and you make a mistake, and then it's not a good situation.
Yeah, that's the thing when you're doing something and you do something, the collective crowd goes, "Oh, you got a problem."
there's a
I
thought.
mean, that's frankly speaking why on some of the contest stuff we've been calling it, remember, a celebration of models or this or that, trying to not make it a problem or a contest to scare people away.
How about teaching people to build their own personal time saver and play with it at home as a start to a model railroad? Start to a model railroad.
Yep. No, you're right. Well, I have a completely different topic. If you want to jump into a different topic.
Yeah, I think we beat this one today.
So this one will elicit some very interesting commentary. So I actually, it's the end of 2025, and I always do my investment portfolio review. And what I realized was in the last 6 years, my single best investment that had the highest rate of return. This is not funny. This is actually real. Was a model railroading thing. So I will share something with you, and I will tell you this. This blew me away. You guys see that? So these were 3 ON30 Bachman porters. I think I paid $50 for the first one and under 100 for the second two for each of them. The lower two have sound, have DCC and sound. The upward one's just DC. And I put them all on eBay right at Christmas. And by New Year's they sold. So my purchase value, which I think was probably under $200, maybe a little bit more than $200, return after I get done paying off Amazon, will return about $750. So that's about a 2.5 to 3x increase in return on investment. So I have to tell you, I don't know if Blackstone is the same return on investment on buying HON3 engines from Blackstone, but these things that these companies have built that they've discontinued just seem to be increasing in value dramatically. I was blown away. I put it in there versus trying to sell it locally because I wanted to try it and see what would happen. I came away saying, wow, that was pretty amazing. I started them off at $200, $220 for those two porters, and they bid way up. They had a lot of bids too. So there are some things in model railroading that are actually good investments. And by the way, Jesse, back to your thing of getting rid of stuff. What I realized was that what I've decided to model, I don't need porters for. It's not an area they ran porters. I have a couple of porters that are out of the box, and I've been running them at when we saw our club layouts up at public events. And I realized I'm not going to build another bunch of micro layouts. I don't need a bunch of porters. I got these 3 locomotives in there. I decided I'm going to buy a workbench, which is a 6-foot one of these ones that you can adjust the height on and roll and everything. And it was like $400. And so I figured I'll sell off some porters and fund buying my workbench. But I was just amazed by, there is value in that. If you've got things that are sitting there that you don't think you're going to use in your modeling, your layouts in the future, sometimes it's a pretty good idea to just sell them on.
I've done eBay with some DC equipment and all sorts of strange and wonderful things. And it's as a friend of mine once said, sometimes the magic works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well,
but it's a great ad. Congratulations for you.
Well, I have to say, my other experience with eBay was we bought a vacuum sealer, one of these chamber vacuum sealers a number of years ago to do sous vide. And I went looking at bags, and of course I look on Amazon and eBay, and there are the guys selling packages of 25 bags or something for $15. And then I went online and I found this store that would sell me 1,000 bags of a type for $30 or $40. So for $150, I bought 4,000 vacuum bags. This is the way I work, right? If you're going to buy dishes, you buy 2 sets because I know I'm going to break them. So that way I'll always have 12. But anyway, so I bought 4,000 bags. And my thought was I'll become an eBay person. So what I did was I made up, bags of certain sizes. There were 4 bags of, 10 or so, 20 in each. And I put them on eBay and had a shop and was selling them. And the problem is it is a full-time job to make a little bit of money. Because if you don't reply, if somebody puts a bid in or a buy, and it was all of it was buy it now, and you don't reply within 24 hours, these people get really worked up. And so it's a lot easier when you do like I did the locomotive thing. If you got a locomotive to sell, I took 3 or 4 pictures of it, put the ad up there, put it on for a week, ignored it. At the end of the week, it came back. There was a winning bidder. You select their shipping, and what they do is they just give you a thing where you print out a shipping label and glue it on, tape it on it, and take it to the post office and ship it, and it gets tracked. And I saw it getting tracked, and what I did was I sent an email to each of the winning bidders and said, thank you for bidding on it, and let them know. And it was a very smooth process. Not a lot of, if I look at the effort for this, it was minimal. So I think that single item selling is a lot easier than trying to make it a business per se. Anyway,
when I was designing oil refineries centuries ago, I carpooled with a guy, and he did that. He opened an eBay business, and towards the end of our relationship, I asked him, "Well, how's the thing?" He said, my wife and I chatted about this use of the garage full of stuff. And you're right, it was a full-time job selling $25 and $10 and $3 and $2. You couldn't, there was no money in it.
Yeah, it's a toughie. But anyway,
eBay itself is trying to upgrade so people will only sell the higher priced items on its market.
well, that's good. Actually, that's good. If the more they increase the higher price auctions, that means the mid price auctions may come to our auction, right? The mid price items, if they're because one of the things about our auction is a lot of the items at the auction we've lost the better items to eBay.
Mhm.
So anybody got any big plans this weekend?
Uh,
Other than the meetup here, obviously, which is a big
Yeah,
part of everybody's
yeah.
weekend.
Well, I plan to use some time to work on my layout. Gradually rebuilding something that was never completely rebuilt in the first place. My use of 2 millimeter ground foam or 2 millimeter sheet material as a ground uh, effect for between tracks and things like that is something I want to eventually talk about. But it's been interesting. I had to sort of get my soldering skills back up, which
Well, that's
is
good.
pain. And then there's the problem of soldering joiners to track and dropping the feeds and reestablishing the bus under the layout for power. I'm still using DCC and a mixture of local phi, but both of them need the power on the track. So anyway, trying to keep it that way so I can get back to building structures again. And maybe a few freight cars. I did, by the way, renew the groups.io plastic freight car builders, which I own. Had to pay the $220 for it.
Mhm.
I've never heard of that. And I'm not sure it matters, but how come you should advertise things like that? Somehow or other, put a note, even if it's in the Coast Extra or something, that this thing exists. There may be somebody out there that would be interested. I don't know how I would ever find it.
I
I wouldn't
actually
even think
Yeah,
about
that actually brings up a question. So I've had a little bit of a dialogue with Michael Eldridge. So Michael manages our calendar, and there was a decision made at some point, and I've not really heavily fought around this decision yet that our PCR calendar should only have NMRA events on it because it's a PCR calendar. And I kind of made the argument that I'd like to see us have a calendar that's got everything on it in Northern California. And actually, I've talked to Michael about what I'd like to do is make it a Google form entry where, instead of trying to send an email, right now you send an email to Michael and say, this is my event. And then he puts it up. What I want to have is something you fill out a form and name of the event, who's the contact person, what's the description of the event, what's the date of the event and the time of the event. And then that just becomes a calendar item. Do you guys see that? Would that be valuable to have a single? Would you see that as being a valuable resource for you and other people to have that to go to? Because I thought, if the NMRA, if the PCR calendar became the calendar for Northern California model railroaders, that means everybody would go to it and see the PCR website, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if that makes sense. I kind of feedback thought process of how hard I should push for it in my PCR role. Jesse's saying yes. I mean, I find it hard to. And by the way, if you have an event, or somebody has something they want in the Coast, me to put in the Coast Extra, just let me know. I mean, I look at the Coast Extra as kind of this continuous newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, the question I've always asked is, we want to have a newsletter. I don't know what we put in a newsletter that people would find interesting. I'd really rather spend the effort if we want to write an article about something and put it in the PCR newsletter for the whole PCR versus just the Coast. That's kind of my thought.
Mm-hmm.
Having a whole bunch of effort to build a document with an article in it. There's so many articles out there. Having an article in a Coast newsletter just doesn't have a huge amount of benefit versus putting the same articles in the PCR newsletter every quarter. So, and I think the Coast Extra to me is kind of one of those things. Even if you don't look at it every time, but what's interesting is the one that I sent out yesterday, it had a 62% open rate.
Mm.
I mean, I actually just looked at, so you guys know we get pretty good data on it. I'll share this with you guys. This is what Constant Contact looks like. So this was that email I sent out yesterday at 10:15. And we sent 375, 363 were delivered, 12 bounced because if people unsubscribe from Constant Contact, it's hard to get them back. It turns out, we're going to actually trying to do something to work around that. But then, of the 63, there were 230 were opened and looked at, and 133 have not been opened. And so, that's percentage-wise, that's a pretty good percentage of folks that actually look at it. 63% open rate is really pretty reasonable. So, I feel like I don't pay a lot of attention to metrics because I don't see this as a business to manage, but I feel like that's a pretty good rate of people getting some information. And kind of the way it is, if you don't look at one and you go look at the next one, you typically get kind of the information flow at that point about, what are the events that are coming. Same thing as we had here, because to me, that's what's important to people, is to know what's coming up.
Yeah.
It's not a place to get modeling information. There are too many other places to get that. So, and by the way, if anybody has any disagreements, suggestions, feel free to send me an email or call me. I'm always looking for ways to make things better. And of course, if anybody is interested in being an assistant superintendent, that would be even better. We did.
For me, I'm just finally got my hearing back after a 2-month period of being totally deaf due to some ear infections.
Congratulations.
My hearing aid again.
Has anybody talked to Brian Booth? I sent a text to his wife, and I don't think I got anything back. Has anybody heard anything about Brian? Gotta go run down and see how he's doing. He was having lots of challenges last time I talked to them. So, yeah, and Jer came to the business meeting in Pleasanton last night, so he's actually up and about now. He was in the hospital right before the auction. So I guess maybe that's what you need to have as a member's health report. I need to add that in as a subject section at the bottom of the Coast Extra. Update on Coast members' health. Who's in the hospital, who's not. That's kind of morbid, isn't it? I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I get these morbid thoughts and I don't control them very well.
Yeah.
You say that. You say that over and everybody laughs. One of the worst things around is keeping track of the Christmas cards you don't get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say much more than that.
Yeah. It's
at least when you're at my end of the decade numbers.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Well, there was that thing. There was that thing in college. I don't know if you remember the. I think every university had the same story, or college the same story. When they first come in, you have the first big meeting, and the dean gets up and he says, "Well, congratulations for being here. Look at the person on the left of you and the person on the right of you. Neither of them will be here when you graduate."
Yeah.
And that idea of, and I don't know if you remember that. That was that conversation about it, and the scary thing is if you think it from a bell curve perspective, if you're 83 and you're a male,
Yeah.
and there are two people in the room, you look at each other, one of you ain't gonna be here for much longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely true. But you start hitting the bell curve there.
You mentioned that when I started as an undergraduate in engineering, you looked in front of you, to the left, to the right, and behind you, and only one of you were going to be at graduation. And that was, out of the five of you, we had like 20% actually make it.
I went to GMI, which was GM's Engineering and Management School. So GM basically paid for it. The way it worked was you got hired by a GM division. They sponsored you out of a plant. And then it was a co-op program to go through the school and that. And when I started, they had 3,000 students, 1,500 in two sections. 1,500 would go to school while the other 1,500 were working, then they'd reverse. And it was probably about 76, 75, late 75, 76. GM was having lots of issues. We were in a recession. The Japanese cars were doing well. It was the first the first fuel embargoes where nobody wanted to buy those big boats anymore. They wanted to buy those little fuel efficient Japanese cars. And GM decided that they wanted to cut the funding to GMI. And the way they decided to do it was they decided to go from 3,000 students to 2,000 students in one semester. And they started the semester by telling everybody, we're going to flunk a third of you out this semester. If you don't want to flunk out, you got to get a 90 average, which is like a B plus, B plus average. If you're under that, you may flunk out. And I got to tell you, the stress level in 12 weeks, 6 weeks of class, 6 weeks going back to your plant, and then six more weeks of class. That second 6 weeks when we came back and there were kids that, were looking at getting 80s or 85s on their grades. And they knew, and these were kids, the thing about this here, was watching Officer and a Gentleman. It's a lot like that. These were kids, that came from working families that got into GMI because their parents worked at GM, and it was their way out of being a blue collar worker on the assembly line. And to think about that being taken away, it was, I have to tell you, from watching upfront stress, it was one of the real early indicators of how difficult that can be for people.
Yeah.
I had a couple of folks there were a couple of guys in the fraternity I lived in that, by the third or fourth week of the second, they just gave up. They stopped going to class. They said, there's no way I'm going to, and they've flunked out.
Yeah. Well, when I was freshman at Oregon State in the chemistry class for freshman engineers in that school, the teacher on the first day, the instructor stood up and he says, my job is to wash all of you folks out that aren't qualified to be an engineer. And it was the same thing. Look to your left, look to your right, look in front of you, look at that. There's only going to be 1 out of the 5 of you left when I'm done with you. And it turns out he was pretty correct about that.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
That was why I always said that calculus was that way with engineers, right?
That was the moment when I realized that university was not going to be like high school, and I'd better get serious about this.
That was
Well, the other problem was that you also never knew that studying for being an engineer was a pain in the ass and a stupid thing. Oh God, it was so hard.
Yeah.
I started as a historian.
Oh.
I went to Portland State originally.
Oh, okay.
Wound up getting master's degree in history and finding that it was no use. So I basically reinvented things after I got out of the Army and turned into an accountant and then a software guy.
Yeah, that's kind of true. That's the scariest thing is that the number one conferred degree in the United States is what? You know what the number one, the highest, the degree that has more people get it than any other is psychology.
Hmm.
Wow.
And I think 50% of the students in psychology do it because they know they're crazy and they want to try to figure it out. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, you got to think about it. If you don't become a psychologist, what exactly do you do with a psychology degree?
Teach.
Historians live in the past.
Yeah.
Well, historians, yeah. A lot of it's going into academia. Look, my
Yeah.
daughter did her degree in math, and she's a professor now at Scripps. So there are academic paths you can take, but that's primarily
Okay, so the question was in let's call it 1970, what was the highest, or 1980, what was the highest paying degree for the graduating class in the United States? It was cartography, map making, because some fool in Florida got one of the only degrees there, but he happened to be 6'10" and a star basketball player, and his starting salary was like $4 million. And that was in 1970. And that made the highest paid graduate.
wow.
Totally useless information.
I don't know.
Guys, I
I would
have
have
to
thought
go.
it was a medical school degree.
No,
Nowadays, they want to pay student athletes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to leave, fellas. So you all take care and have a nice week.
Yep.
Love it. It's great to see you. Oh, I should probably get going too.
Let me see. I had one
Yeah, there-
model.
Phil, I
Yes,
need
sir.
there's something for this show and tell. It's just a couple of pictures and so
Here,
forth.
I have one picture for showing. This is and it's not a current one. This is a Banta kit. It's
Mhm.
a Banta warehouse kit, and what I'm doing is this is my module / modular. So what you're seeing on the left is a module that I built probably 10 years ago that now is kind of fixed in my modular room. And what I've done is I've taken a track that was a spur and I'm extending it over to this new module. Actually, it turns out that little stop there, the bumper, was actually just soldered together out of a couple of three pieces of rail, and I drilled some holes down in to shove it into so it would stop anything that came down that siding. And it turns out I was able to pull that out. So I'm going to set it up so I can pull that out and move it to the far end, to the right end. But anyways, it's now pretty well complete. I'm turning it into a strawberry warehouse. So this is theoretically down, by Watsonville area and that area between Watsonville and Moss Landing. And I'm now producing crates of strawberries, and I don't have any pictures of those. I'll have a pictures of them at some point. I found these 0.6 millimeter beads on Amazon, and 0.6 millimeters. You got to think about a millimeter, how big it is. You got to think about how big 0.6 millimeters is. When you get the bag of beads, it looks like dust in a bag. But when you put those in these 3D printed strawberry trays I made, they look really pretty good in O scale. I'll take some pictures of it for next time we get together.
Yeah.
I'll have a few of them. Should have a few of them in the modeling. That's what I'll put in the modeling the coast.
They made a few crates of apples for Dave's apple.
I think they've got some that are like 1 millimeter, 1.2 millimeter, and I'll probably get those and do apples and do the same way. I'm finding is you can do a really good job of filament printing crates because you put the sides of the crates that the top's just 0.4 millimeters wide, which is the print head, and they look really pretty good. I'll take some pictures of them for next time we get together. It's hard to buy that kind of stuff, and buying it and painting the fruit is really a battle. I'm sure Dave knows that. He's probably done a bit of that.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about this is when you become a model railroader, a serious model railroader, you have to think metric as well as the regular foot yard system.
Well, I hate to say it. The 3D printing, I use FreeCAD, and it's set up for metric. And I don't know if you can change it to English units, but I've started using metric, and you get through the perspective of, in O scale, a foot is 6.3 millimeters.
By the way, they're no
inch,
longer English units. England has gone metric.
and it's 25.4 millimeters to the inch. And what's interesting is because quarter inch relates well to inches, you kind of get that. Well, that's 4 feet is. And once you get through those conversions in your head and you move over to where you're doing things in metric, it makes a lot more sense. It's a lot easier to use. Of course, still notwithstanding the fact that back in the days when the SP and Rio Grande bought those Krauss Mafia engines, not only were they diesel hydraulic instead of diesel electric, and metric, and they were not only diesel hydraulic, but they were metric.
Mm-hmm.
And metric in the 1960s was a communist plot to destroy America.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's I was always amazed that they did that they went to this whole different, not only technology but metric.
But the U.S. Army was completely metric by that point.
Yeah, well,
we ranged in meters, kilometers. We never, you never use the foot and the yard when in the actual combat units. I mean, your ammunition was 7.6 millimeter.
Yeah, a lot of that was
7.62.
Yeah, if you wanted interoperability with other NATO countries, metric became the standard for interoperability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I find it, but I still do have a hard time. If you ask me what an inch is, I could probably put an inch between my fingers, pretty doggone close. If you start asking me, what's a centimeter, what's 10 centimeters, I get a little weird about it. But you know what I'm saying? It's not as accurate in my brain. My brain has
centimeter is about this.
No, exactly. But once you get into it, it is true.
Yep.
I've forgotten how to raise my hand. This is David Sampson. But while we're doing some show or tell things, I'd like to show a couple of items if I could.
Cool, absolutely. You can share if you want, or if you're gonna hold them up, I'll spotlight you.
I'll hold them up.
Okay,
so
let me spotlight you so everybody can see you. There we go.
So first and foremost, I have this really interesting passenger car. There's one thing you can say about the French. They built stuff that looked like things that no one else had ever built. And these cars were known as sausage cars for obvious reasons. They come set with interior lighting, and the interior lighting is really nice. You just touch the top of the roof and the lights come on or off. Full interiors, made by a company called REE Models. And you would think that commercially you couldn't. These came out, I think, initially. Well, certainly they were running in the late 1940s. I think actually they might have been produced in the 30s. And it's surprising. They not only ran 3 different versions of them. They ran state railways after they went to computer numbers. That's French state railways. They had French state railways before they had computer numbers. And then they also ran a small series of them when they were in one of the private railroads in the pre-nationalization period. So that was one big find. I got one set of them, and I've got another set on order, but they're really nice. Now the problem is to go find the appropriate locomotive to pull them with. And then the second thing I'd like to show is after waiting 15 years, Cato, this is HO scale Cato model. Let me take the lid off. Finally produced a model of the VT 1816. So this was a post-World War II East German railway diesel rail car set. When they ran across the ferries to Sweden, they could only be 4 units long, but within Europe, especially Eastern Europe, they could have as many as 6 cars in a set. And the reason they went down diesel is because in the routes that they wanted to run, there were sections that were not electrified. And in the sections that were electrified, there were 4 different systems. So they decided diesel was the way to go. And long since retired, but they managed almost accidentally to preserve one set, which now runs between Germany and Czechoslovakia. This is not ideally the one I would have wanted. This is a propaganda version. The DR, the East German Railway, never passed up an opportunity for propaganda. And they had these socialist heroes, and one of them was Ernst Thälmann. So this is his name is on the side of the locomotive, as you can see there. But it's a really nice unit. And, Cato doesn't make that much stuff in HO scale. They're primarily in scale. And I'm looking forward to, I just got some basically decoder buddies. I'm sure most of you know what those are, but actually these are the ESU equivalent of the decoder buddy that supports the Plux 22 standard as opposed to the 21 pin MTC standard that probably most of you are using, because I wanted to be able to individually turn on the lights and actually turn the lights on in 3 steps in each of the 4 wagons. So I'm going to use ESU function decoders, FX. They're a lot of fun to play with if you've never played with. I mean, it's basically a DCC decoder that doesn't have the motor drive circuitry in it, but you just program the function decoder to the same address as the power car or the powered locomotive, and then you have the ability to independently turn various functions on and off. And hold a little bit higher. I have to remember. Oh, the second one says this is a zentrale Jugendobjekt. The communists were crazy. I mean, they just did all sorts of funny stuff. And, so everything had to be branded and identified, and it was woke on steroids, basically, except it was communist woke. And then here you can kind of see the Ernst Thälmann marking on the side. But this is a really slick looking rail car, a little lightweight for my taste, but when I take them apart, I'll add a little weight to them. And unlike many modern European models, where taking the car apart to do any work on the inside of it is a nightmare. You've got a 10% chance of damaging something during disassembly and an additional 10% chance of damaging something on reassembly. These come apart pretty easily. You have to know which way to pull the bottom relative to the front end of the car. But I've waited a long time for these. They produced them a long time ago. This model is a little bit better than the ones they did 15 years ago, but it's nice if you wait long enough. Occasionally, something you want comes out. Of course, I'm still waiting for my plastic HO scale Cincinnati and John Henry, but I seriously doubt that I'll ever see either of those produced in plastic. So that's all I had.
Very, sehr interessant.
Oh, es freut mich, dass Sie haben es interessant gefunden.
À la français, c'est bon.
Well, yeah, but France is a problem. I don't speak French. I mean, I can look at French railroad stuff and kind of figure out what they're talking about. But there was a really nice article written about these sausage cars. In fact, I think it was a special issue of France Trains, one of the other magazines. But one of the problems I found out is that when you scan a page that has illustrations in it, and is basically set up as double column text, and the text tends to wrap around the images. When you scan it and translate it, then you have 50 pieces, maybe not that bad, 20 pieces of text that need to be put back together to get some sensible English text out of it. So the scanning and translating software isn't all that smart when it comes to looking at contemporary magazine layouts.
By the way, the poster in back of you was very interesting, the LMS one.
Oh, yeah. This is, do you know who the artist was?
I have several of them, but just offhand, I can't remember the name.
So this is Cassandre. who did all sorts of transportation posters. And most of the ones I have in my house are reproductions, but this one is kind of interesting. This was an authorized reproduction by Cassandra's grandson. And, it probably cost you $350 just for the postage to get it shipped from France and in unfolded condition. But 10 or 12 years ago, there was some guy on the East Coast that had gone to France, brought a bunch of posters back, and sold them at a somewhat reasonable price, like $150 or so.
Yeah, I have the cheap reproductions, I'm afraid.
I think is more interesting. I'm interested in railway art, so I'm trying to figure out how to hold my camera. Okay, so you see that picture that's kind of in the middle and the top. This I have to turn around now because I forget which one it is. Okay, so that's a nice painting of or an illustration of a Pennsylvania Railroad S1. And what was interesting about these is these illustrations were made by that American designer whose name unfortunately eludes me right now, not Dreyfus, but Raymond Loewy. And these were made in the 60s, shortly before Loewy's death, and they were basically authorized lithographs where Loewy looked at him and said, "Hey, you screwed that one up," and you throw it out. That one's okay, and he initialed it. So these are kind of neat. And I have two of them. Unfortunately, they're not the same scale. One is of the S1, one is of the Pennsylvania Railroad T1. And these came out of an art auction in San Francisco probably 25 years ago. And they had somehow acquired 5 or 6. And the S1 and the T1 were the two most interesting to me, being very interested in streamlined locomotives.
Dave, you're a wonderful collector, and I'd love to have a time to just, sit and talk.
Well, if you're ever in Sparks, give me a call. Come over and pay a visit.
You're up in, okay. The last time was for the historical convention.
Oh,
Well, we'll have to visit David when the convention's in 27 is in Reno.
well, yeah. If they do it over here, I'm not sure. It's the conventions that I've gone to in the area. They've either gone to the convention center, which is an expensive proposition, but they have this. Believe it or not, they have this gigantic building in downtown Reno, which is the National Bowling Congress or whatever. Yeah. It's an enormous building. And they have meeting rooms. I don't know what the convention requirements would actually be, but the stamp club, postage stamp collectors club that I belong to here, that's where they have their annual meeting. But where they meet at's too small of a room, absolutely unsuitable. But if I were going to check venues, that would be one of the venues that I would look into. And another one I'd probably look into is Boomtown.
I think the other one they looked at, the one that was really, as I understood it, fairly pursuing conventions was the Pepper Mill, which is south of town.
Well, yeah, I mean, Pepper Mill's nice place. The only problem is it's probably the second most expensive venue in Reno, second only to Atlantis. Okay. Right. But I would say, I know Boomtown has some space. I've been there for concerts. It's not a concert hall, but it's flat space. Boomtown would be one I'd look into. Having a convention at the Pink Orchid would be interesting. I'm sure we get lots of people to come to that.
Yeah.
Is the Pepper Mill still owned by the Sino family?
I don't know. Pepper Mill, I rarely go there except for hot August nights because the parking is so bad. Atlantis, I go to. Their parking is much better. There's 37 entrances and exits. But, Pepper Mill is one of these places where there's 2 ways in and 2 ways out, and it's always a nightmare.
I'll ping Dave and see what kind of where their planning is on at for it. So
Is Boomtown the one out in Verde? Up on
Yeah,
that,
yeah. It's the casino, the first real casino you
right,
hit when you
next to
come
the
into
big
town.
right
big
over the
sports
border.
store.
Yeah, you go
Right.
over the border and you hit Boomtown.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
where you always bought gas. Was the gas station in Boomtown.
I
Yeah.
was there last night.
Yeah, I think the only potential downside to Reno is just the number of layouts there are in the area, but it's not that bad. There's actually a reasonable number.
Well, maybe the thing to think about doing, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is that I think it's basically under the umbrella of the Sierra.
Division.
What are we, a division?
Yeah.
I think it's under the umbrella of the Sierra Division that late every year, I think in November, we have layout tours.
Yep.
And those layout tours are pretty astounding. It's kind of in the boonies out here. There aren't that many model railroaders, but there are some magnificent railroad layouts.
Well, and yeah, you have land and lousy weather in the winter, the two key ingredients.
That's right.
You don't necessarily have basements, but you generally, if you can get enough land, you can build a building or have a little space. So.
Yeah, there's one guy, I forget his name, has a layout here, which is pretty nice. He decided to have something modest. I think he decided to model the railway line between Reno and San Francisco or something. So he goes through Roseville, and he has models the ice house and everything else. It's in a giant garage. And what I like is his walk under is a step under. He actually poured the floor so you could take 2 steps and get into the layout. Take 2 steps, get on the other side of the layout, and then 2 steps to climb out of the hole. And that is so convenient. And I figured he had 2 lifetimes of work there. And when I saw his tour this year, he's decided he didn't have enough railroads, so he's added a second level, which is in itself kind of mind blowing. And he scratch builds all his switches, and I think he's close to having built 1,000 switches turnouts.
Wow. Yeah. That was, I think we played it on here. There was one of the O-scale layouts at the narrow gauge convention that was in, I think it was in Pittsburgh. And it was, the guy had designed the basement he wanted, and then the architect designed the house over the basement. And he had like a family room area. And to go into the layout, there were like 3 steps down and a walk under, which had a drain in it for water. And you walked into the layout room under the layout. It was pretty impressive. I was quite impressed by it. I think it was, I don't know if at one point I was starting to play some of those videos here that I've done, and I should probably do them again. Maybe we'll try to do that next time we get together. We'll play a couple of those videos. They're basically.
Yeah, when I was trying to build my house on my farm in Western Pennsylvania, it wasn't built. I couldn't get anyone to build it for the right price. I worked with an architect for a year, and it was kind of designed around the collection room and the layout room, and the rest of it was driven by security and energy concerns. But I couldn't get a decent bid from any contractor to build it, so I said, heck with it.
There's a guy named Dick Tomlinson, and outside of Michigan, outside of Detroit, between Detroit and Flint, and he was a Detroit policeman. And he decided when he retired, they bought 20 acres of land outside of Detroit, and he designed a basement for his layout. And I don't know if it's like 50 by 40 or 60 by 40. It's a pretty good sized basement. And started talking to the contractor, and the contractor told him he could put up trusses and do free span. So basically, no columns in the basement and that. And so he gave the dimensions, and the contractor went off, and our architect went off, designed the house and everything, and they got all done, and they started building. And he realized that he gave them what he thought were the interior dimensions of the basement, and they took those to be the exterior dimensions. So he lost the foundation wall of what he had designed for his layout. So he had to shrink the layout by 6 inches. And it turned out the biggest impact of that was he had a Y, and the Y wouldn't work anymore. And rather than redesign the whole layout, what he did was he had him punch a 6-inch hole through the foundation wall and put a 14-inch piece of conduit or of pipe, 6-inch pipe, running out like 14 or 15 feet under a deck, and that's actually the end of the Y. So you go on the Y, and all of a sudden your train goes into this hole in the side of the house and goes out 15 feet outdoors, and then comes back in. So that was
I
pretty.
wonder what his plan was to recover a locomotive or a train if he ever had a derailment in the pipe.
I don't know. Maybe I would assume that you probably can unscrew the far end so you can get in the far end of the tube out
Yeah.
under the deck. I don't know. I didn't get into that level of detail. That was one of those layouts that I actually went back and operated on it. And when you operated on it, you make at least 3 or 4 walks around the basement every time you go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those bowl of spaghetti track plans that is just absolutely amazing. And actually, the way it is now, it's probably only about 30% scenic, maybe something. And a lot of the track you can see, and I just can't imagine when they get all the scenery in, all that hidden track is just going to be amazing. So,
Nightmares of the YSL come to mind.
yeah. Well, what's interesting is that we tried to do this on new tracks is go to a layout, do a video that's not a video of trains running and like the TSG videos that make it look like it's a real railroad, but just walk around. I've got a gimbal and just walk around the room so you get a feel for how the layout is situated in the room, how it's done, and then take just a bunch of pictures of the scenes together. And it gives you a real good feel of kind of what they were designing. And in fact, the one we did this week, I mean, I can run it if you guys are interested. It's actually a layout that's a SSN3 layout that I don't think has any real scenery yet, but it was pretty amazing. Are you guys interested? I can play it if you were interested.
Sure.
Hang on, let me go in here. This was the most recent one we this is from, we do these on New Tracks Modeling, so that's where they're from. So this was he's doing the Chile line. This was the narrow gauge convention, and
Whoa.
but it's really interesting to see a layout at this level.
Ooh.
And what you realize is how much open space there is between the different parts of track and the layout and that, and clearly someone who's done this before and worked with people, like the thin piece of wood to show you where the fascia is going to be, and
This reminds me of something. I have Pete Constantinos's old layout, the set of spline clamps.
Yep.
That I'm willing to give to any model railroad club that's interested.
What's a spline clamp?
Clamps
spine the roadbed.
Spines in place while you're gluing them. And
okay.
Was this layout in the ground floor of a building or
yeah,
in
it's
basement?
in a daylight basement. I mean, this is Michigan, right?
Okay.
Michigan has 2 things that you need for great model railroading: basements and lousy winter weather.
Right.
And
St. Louis?
because of frost heave, they have to build a basement under the whole house. So if you buy a 2,000 square foot house, single story house, you get a 2,000 square foot basement.
Yeah, same way in Ohio.
Yes, anywhere in the Midwest where they have frost heave, they have to do that because of the frost heave to maintain the foundation. But you can see this guy's, even though this guy, he has a layout that is under construction, he's got an amazing number of great models to go on it. So, that's sometimes people wonder how model railroads get built quickly, because a lot of the scenery doesn't take that much time if you got all the models built and go together pretty quickly.
Yeah, the bed truck, I have to admit, is pretty superlative.
Yeah. But there's going to be a pretty amazing layout when it gets done, I would think.
And my next LiDAR module, I'm gonna use wood for the baseboard instead of foam.
Yeah.
Foam is definitely not good.
Well, the foam, when we do the foam on the modules, I've got some slides on this. I put wood at the edges because if you run foam right to the edge, yeah.
What in the heck is that on the
Oh,
side?
wait
Is
till it
that
goes
a
away. So yeah, you guys. So somebody noticed that. This is the question I asked when I played this last night, or on Wednesday night. Did anybody notice this? Here, hang on. Let me stop right there.
is that a tea boiler or is that
I
a
think that's a
Victorian?
stove. I think that's a stove. I
Wow.
think that's a fancy ass potbelly stove.
Wow.
Doesn't it look like? I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I did not even. I was so focused on the model railroad when I did this. I didn't even notice that in the room. I noticed it in the video later.
Of course, it could have also been a shrine for the house god. You're never sure anymore.
Yeah, that's true too. But it does. If you look on the floor, there are tiles on the. Notice on the floor there are tiles.
Yeah.
And that tends to be an indicator that there's. That's what it is.
Yeah, but I don't see any exhaust pipe coming out of it.
No, it may just have been. It may have. I don't know. It may be on the very back. I don't know whether it was or not.
Is that like a house with smoke with a basement, a partial basement?
Yeah, they call it a daylight basement, right? So it's built into a hill where the basement opens out in the back to the backyard.
Yeah.
They have a lot of these areas. They have rolling hills. This is St. Louis, outside of St. Louis, where they have kind of rolling hills. So they do have, some level of basements behind the houses. The Airbnb we stayed in was that way. It basically had a basement in the bottom, and then the house was built on the next level. But anyway,
How old
this kind of
is the
video
owner?
interesting because you get to see, kind of the techniques they were using, especially when you got one like this that's under construction. It's amazing.
How old do you think the owner is?
He was there. I don't remember which guy he was. He's 65, 70.
Man, he's got a lot of building to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is basically a modeler. Look at this collection.
Yeah. He's a builder. Yep. Well, and he's chosen S scale, which again is kind of that, many ways, a ideal blending of area and detail. So
beautiful stuff. This is beautiful.
But you look at all the equipment, all the things he's built up through the years.
Yeah. Those of us, like 40 years ago, dreamed of this.
There's Lloyd there.
I'm happy with 11 feet by 2.5 feet.
Bill, getting back to the convention next year, having that convention here in Reno Sparks, maybe if it were the week immediately before or the week immediately after the layout tours, I think that'd be, for visitors, I think that'd be a significant enhancement.
Yeah, but they're not going to do it in November. It won't ever be in November. The
Right,
convention's
especially.
always in April, May.
Okay.
Yeah. But you'll do the idea would be if you do the convention, you contact all those people that do the layout tours and ask them to be open for the convention.
Yeah, that's
what we normally do. So normally what you do is, and having it 6 months after the layout tour time is good because they haven't been open for 6 months. But yeah, no, that's. I mean, we had when we did the convention down here, we had 44 layouts open, I think. So yeah, it's good thing to do. They didn't have nearly as many down in San Luis Obispo because they don't have as many layouts in San Luis Obispo because they obviously don't have basements or lousy winter weather. They have more garden railways down there, it turns out. So has anybody else registered for the convention in Rohnert Park? Okay, think about it. That's always that's a fun convention. There's some different things up there, and that Sturgeon's Mill. If you've not been to Sturgeon's Mill, that probably is worth the price of going to the convention. If you've never been there, it's a steam-powered blade, circular blade sawmill, which are very unusual. And I have to, again, coming back to those things that you didn't know you wanted to know until you actually learned them. And we went on the tour there, and they were running the mill. And so basically, they've got the log sled, and the log sled they've got the circular blade, and you can go down below, and the steam engine to run the blade is underneath the sawmill. It's kind of excavated out and dug in. And I was standing there, and you're watching it. And when the wood hits the blade slows down because of the load. And you can actually watch the regulator balls on the top of the locomotive shrink down and then open back up and bring the speed up of the steam engine. And of course that was that balls to the wall, right? Which was you run the balls all the way out where the valve is wide open, and therefore you're getting the maximum power. So that's where the old phrase "balls to the wall" came from. And it was really. I understood the principle at kind of an esoteric level of how regulating balls work. As the balls spin out farther, as they slow down, they come in, and that lifts the valve and puts more steam in. As the balls go out farther and it's going faster, they decrease the amount of steam that's going to it, right? So you can regulate it that way. If the balls are running all the way out, it's wide open, and so. But actually watching it, you could actually see the balls change the diameter as it slowed down and sped back up. And I thought that was pretty cool. So that's kind of my sales pitch for the convention. It was worth $300 just or $500 or whatever it was just to see those things and learn those things. So because I don't know I would ever send that anywhere else in my life. So
I'm still holding out for until I'm sure that I'll be able to
yeah, no, I understand. It should be fun. I thought, last time they had the convention up there, I thought it was really pretty good convention. It's a nice area.
I'm going to a convention up there.
Yep. And then of course the LD SIG weekend is coming up. It's coming up on the end of this month. Saturday is going to be operating sessions. I need to contact her. I haven't heard anything about operating sessions yet. So
that information will be going out soon, Phil.
Oh, okay. I was gonna go harass Jim. I was gonna send Jim a harassing email and say, "Did you forget about me?" But I won't.
Nope, he hasn't. He thinks he's corralled all the operating layouts he can. We've got 38 open slots, so messages will be going out to start looking for preferences.
Yep. And it depends. If somebody's working, I may end up going and helping them, but that's the here and there. But so the Saturday will be operating sessions. And it sounds like if you're interested, you sign up so you make sure you get an opportunity to grab one of the operating sessions. And then Sunday will be clinics and the contest and consulting and all that. It kind of reversing the way it used to be. Most of that stuff used to be on Saturday and the operating sessions on Sunday. This time it's been reversed. So the operating sessions and stuff are on Saturday and the meetings and stuff are on Sunday. And there's a virtual option.
And
so if you're not in the Bay Area, you don't want to travel to the Bay Area, you can do the virtual option and go to the Sunday stuff virtually. And that's done by John and Sydney Albacola. Yeah. So and they've done it for a number of years. It's a pretty good thing to go to. Yeah. I mean, I've been going for a few years and I've had good success. When I've done a couple of designs, I think had 2 layout design consultations there, and both times there were very good commentaries about things that I didn't think about, and that whoever was doing the review said, well, you might want to think about doing this way, because either A, it'll be more prototypical, or B, it'll just work better. So, I had an original design where I had a lot of my switching was off a switchback. And basically what they said is, the reality is I didn't think about this. I looked at the time saver and saw people putting switchbacks. Oh, you want to put switchbacks in because it makes switching more difficult, which you don't realize is that the railroads would never do that. They would spend money to make switching easier because you spend a little bit of money for better track work today, and you save in labor for the next 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they tended to not have a lot where you had to switch back. And the worst thing is if you have a switchback where you have to move a customer's car to use the switchback or get somebody moving customers' cars until they were ready to have them moved is actually a pretty strong no-no for the railroads. Larry would know that. Larry's here. He's, you know, I'm sure the railroads probably had a strong edict about you don't move cars unless the customer wants them moved.
Yeah, but sometimes.
Yeah, no, I understand. But yeah, so it's worth going to from that perspective. If you're doing a design of something, get some feedback. I always think it's great to have other eyes look at it because a lot of times I get transfixed on one thought process, and somewhere in the beginning of that thought process there was a potential argument point. And sometimes it's good to have somebody identify an argument point and make you rethink the process. It's kind of my personal version of groupthink in my head, where the group of people in my head decide they have a direction they all want to go.
Hey, Phil, just one comment before I forget. On your email yesterday for the meeting today, the link didn't work.
Right.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, it was a bad link.
Yeah, I tried it on my iPhone, and then when I got home, I tried it on my desktop. It just does absolutely nothing.
Yes.
Okay, I better check that and replace it for the next one then. I must have a bad link there.
That's interesting. It didn't work for me from the web, but when I put it into Zoom, you know, split it out into the meeting ID and the password and entered it actually into the Zoom app, it worked.
I bet I'd be willing to make you a bet that what happened was that when I copied, I left one character out of the copy string.
No, I don't think so. My experience is the same as Ken's. When I took the link and pulled out of it the message ID and poked it into the Zoom app, and then went back to the link and pulled out the password and poked it into the Zoom app, it worked.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is the link may have one character missing. In other words, I copied it. You know how you copy things?
Oh yeah, I know.
And if I got one letter missing, and you know what I think I did? I think I copied that inside of the constant contact and moved it. And I bet when I copied, I missed a letter. And so the link doesn't work because it's missing a letter, but the password and ID inside are still good. I'll just have to go back and recopy it. I apologize.
Yeah, Phil, the only thing is that when I click on the link, absolutely nothing happens. It doesn't say wrong address or anything. Nothing. It doesn't even go over to Zoom or to the internet. Nothing happens.
Yeah. That probably is. I'll probably go back and find that I missed a character. I bet that's what happened. You know, sometimes just moving too fast, quite frankly.
Yeah. Thank goodness I kept an old email.
Yep. I will make sure I replace it for the next one.
PC. It's the only way to be sure that you're.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to call it. My wife is off judging somewhere at Belmont or something, and I'm home with the dogs and going to take them for a walk now. So, but seriously, if you got some pictures, and this doesn't need to be a model you're building today. It can be something you built 10 years ago. Be something you built 20 years ago. Take 5 or 6 pictures, send an email to the Coast Sup, that Coast Sup Gmail address, or you can send it to me at my email address, whichever you want, and we'll put those together for the 24th. If you include a picture of yourself, because it's kind of nice to put a picture up of people, and then and if you send me an email, write just a little bit about it in case you can't make it next time we get together on the 14th. Or the 24th, in case you're indisposed. That way I'll have something I can read about it. But this was a model, this was a kit, this was whatever it was, this is a scale, just a little write-up on it. And then I'll put that all together, and if we can get 5 or 6, 8 people to put them in, that'll be pretty cool.
When it comes to building kits, what kind of amazes me about model trains, but also building kits, is that there's a very small niche market for people that have very deep pockets. And the German company NOCH, NOCH, has announced that they are making a model of Kaiser Ludwig II's Linderhof Palace. €500.
Yep.
I'll pass on that. I'll wait until they make a kit of Neuschwanstein because I'd put that on my layout.
At $750 plus tariff.
Right,
Plus
15%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're that is the only thing I truly envy the European train enthusiasts for, is that they have access. And if you're an HO model railroader for European model railroading, especially German, Austria and German, you have an amazing array of models and things to work with.
Add Swiss to that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the number of kits and buildings they have there that have been done through the years. Well, good. Well, everybody have a great week. We will see you on the 24th. Send in some pictures. Larry, hopefully you guys are having a discussion. We'll hope that you guys have a good response on us getting together and doing something. And
Yeah, well, if we have a quorum today, we're supposed to meet at 12:30. So
yeah, no, I know.
yeah,
I just want to get those. Want to get those scheduled. And like I said, I think it sounds like that June. I'll send out a board note. It sounds like that June date was the right date for the. Was it June 14th was the date that looked like it was available? Somebody said they thought there was something else that date. That's June 14th is Flag Day. So that is a potential auction date, I think. So
okay. Hey, we'll discuss it hopefully today.
Cool. Well, everybody have a good one. Adieu. We will see you in a
Happy
couple
New Year,
weeks.
everybody.
All right.
Bye
Okay.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.